Welcome to the debate. If you look at the global streaming charts today, from Brazil to Berlin, you will see a phenomenon that completely defies traditional Western media logic. We aren't talking about Hollywood blockbusters or, the latest gritty prestige drama from HBO. We are talking about boys' love, or BL.
Right, and what began as a fairly niche subculture in Japanese manga has really mutated into this transnational, multi-billion-dollar industry, one that is utterly dominated by Thailand, Korea, and Japan. But as this content sweeps the globe, there is a fundamental question remaining about its DNA.
Exactly. It is arguably the question of the decade for media strategists. We are looking at a massive divergence here. The central question we are tackling today is this. Is this explosive success the result of a cultural lockdown? Meaning, is it a formula so uniquely tied to Asian social structures and idol culture that it just cannot be replicated elsewhere?
Or is the West simply failing to execute a universal blueprint for romance? Because that is the tension we're exploring today.
I will be taking the position of the cultural lock. My argument is that BL is not just a genre. It is a byproduct of a very specific ecosystem involving the female gaze, rigid social hierarchies, and the highly specific idol economy that simply does not exist in the West. You cannot copy-paste this formula because, frankly, you cannot copy-paste the culture that built it.
And I take the opposing view, which we will call the content gap. I argue that BL success isn't about cultural destiny at all. It's about a failure of Western strategy. The West is fully capable of producing this level of engagement, but our industries are paralyzed by a refusal to prioritize joy-based queer storytelling over trauma. The lock is an illusion. The reality is that the West is leaving billions on the table because they are just too obsessed with grittiness to sell happiness.
Well, then let's look at the machinery of that happiness, because to understand why this is locked to Asia, you really have to look at the user interface of the genre. BL historically, going all the way back to the Japanese Shounen of the 70s to modern Thai series, was a space created largely by women for women. It functions as a utopian escape.
Yeah.
In many Asian societies where traditional gender roles are incredibly heavy, BL offers a fantasy space. It's a place where romance exists completely without the patriarchal baggage placed on women in heterosexual narratives.
Look, that origin story is well documented, and I agree with the historical context. But I think you're conflating the origin with the appeal. You're treating the history like a cage.
The origin dictates the texture, though. I mean, this is a fantasy-first approach. The male characters in these shows aren't necessarily representing gay men in a socio-political context. They are functioning as vessels for idealized emotion. They are detached from the gritty reality of LGBTQ struggles. My point is that Western media operates on a fundamentally different frequency. The West is obsessed with authenticity, with political representation and mirroring real-world trauma.
Sure.
In this demand for realism punctures the fantasy bubble. If you try to do BL in Hollywood, the critics demand you address the politics. And the moment you address the politics, you kill the utopia.
I see what you were saying, but you are treating realism like it's a biological imperative for Western writers, rather than just a bad habit they need to break. You say the West can't do this because of an obsession with realism. I say that obsession is exactly why they are losing the market. The issue isn't that Western audiences are incapable of fantasy, it's that Western queer media is exhausted.
Exhausted is a strong word.
I think it's the right word. Historically, Western queer cinema has been completely dominated by tragedy, AIDS narratives, and the struggle for rights. And these stories are vital, absolutely. But from a consumer standpoint, they are emotionally taxing. Asian BL flipped the script. They made happiness the default setting. They proved that you can have a queer romance where the central conflict isn't, will society destroy us, but simply, does he like me back? This isn't an Asian cultural trait. It is a universal human desire for fairy tales. The reason a teenager in Ohio is watching a Thai series with subtitles isn't because they are fascinated by Thai cultural norms. It's because Hollywood refuses to give them a gay rom-com that doesn't end in tears.
Okay, You are simplifying the happiness into just a narrative choice, but you are ignoring the industrial complex required to sell that happiness. And this brings me to the shipping economy, particularly the Thai model, because this is the strongest evidence for the cultural lock. In Thailand, the Yaoi universe, the Y stands for Yaoi, the Japanese term for boys' love, isn't just about the show. It's about the imaginary couple system. They pair actors, often straight actors, across multiple series, concerts, and variety shows.
You mean the fan service model?
It goes way beyond simple fan service. It is a living, romantic narrative. The actors maintain an ambiguous, flirtatious dynamic in real life. At fan meets, on Instagram, and interviews, they have couple names, they do joint brand endorsements for toothpaste or seaweed snacks, where they literally feed each other on stage.
Right.
The fans aren't just consuming the script. They are consuming the chemistry of the actors in real time. This generates massive revenue streams. Now, try to apply that to the US or Europe. It is impossible.
Why is it impossible? We have celebrity couples.
We have real couples or we have PR stunts that everyone mocks. Western labor unions, privacy laws, and the actor's own intense desire for artistic autonomy would reject the Thai model immediately. A Western actor wants to play a gay role, win an award, and then go play a superhero or a villain to prove their range. In the Thai system, the actor becomes the brand of that romance for years. You cannot replicate this commercial engine in the West. And without that engine, the BL machine runs out of gas.
You're conflating the marketing gimmick with the product itself, though. I acknowledge that the shipping model is a license to print money in Bangkok, but does the global audience actually need that to enjoy the show? I'd argue no. You are confusing what extracts money from the superfans with what captures the general audience.
But the superfans drive the algorithm. They are the ones trending the hashtags that get the show noticed in Brazil or France.
This story drives the algorithm. What the West needs isn't to exploit actors into fake relationships, it needs to master the slow burn. Asian BL excels at this. The lingering glances, the accidental hand touches, the high-tension restraint. It creates immense emotional investment. Compare that to Western media, which prioritizes speed, explicitity, and spectacle. We rush to the sex scene in episode 1 because we think that's what adult means.
Which is a fair critique of Western pacing.
Exactly. Asian BL creates intimacy through restraint. My point is that slow burn is a narrative technique, not a cultural secret. You don't need to force two actors to pretend to date to write a script where they stare into each other's eyes for 30 seconds. The West can do that. They just usually choose not to because they completely underestimate the audience's patience.
I hear you on the narrative pacing, but I think you are underestimating the soft power element here. The data supports the cultural lock because the growth is institutional. It's not just organic. We saw Asian BL titles grow over 400% between 2015 and 2024. The Thai market alone is hitting $150 million US. But look at the driver. This is state-adjacent soft power. In Thailand, Korea, and Japan, this content is increasingly supported by governments to promote tourism and exports. It is treated as a commodity.
Can you clarify what you mean by state-adjacent?
I mean, literally sponsored. The Thai Department of International Trade Promotion actively markets these series abroad. They see BL as a vehicle to sell Thai food, Thai school uniforms, Thai travel locations. It is integrated into the national export strategy, just like K-pop was for Korea. Western queer content is almost always treated as art or activism or indie cinema. It lacks that unified, state-level commercial backing. The production logic, high volume, low cost, state-supported, is highly distinct to the region.
See, I interpret those exact same statistics completely differently. You are looking at supply, I'm looking at demand. If BL were culturally locked, if it were truly a product that only makes sense with an Asian social context, it wouldn't resonate globally. But look at the platform numbers. Gaga Ulala, which is the major LGBTQ streamer in Asia, reports that over 60% of their subscribers are outside of Asia. The United States is their largest premium market.
Consumption doesn't equal replication, though. I mean, you can eat sushi in New York. That doesn't mean New York is Japan.
But consumption dictates viability. We are seeing massive viewership in Brazil, Germany, the UK.
These are audiences with vastly different cultural backgrounds devouring this content. This proves that the lock is non-existent on the reception side. If the audience is already universal, then the only thing keeping the West from replicating it is a refusal to adopt the strategy. The content gap is the only thing separating Hollywood from this billion-dollar industry. They are leaving the door open because they think queer must equal political.
But that equation, queer equals political, is exactly why the lock holds. You cannot just wish away the Western cultural context. In the West, identity politics creates a burden of representation. If you write a queer story in New York, you are expected to engage with the lived reality of being queer in America. If you write a fluffy utopian romance that ignores homophobia, you get criticized for erasing history or being inauthentic.
Critics might say that, but audiences are voting with their wallets.
Let's look at China for a contrast. The damé genre, these massive web novels that get adapted into dramas like The Untamed or Word of Honor, these exist in a heavily censored environment. They cannot show explicit gay sex, they cannot show political radicalism. So what happens? Creators use high symbolism. They use spiritual binding. They use martial arts brotherhoods where the romance is conveyed through the sacrifice of one warrior for another.
Right, it becomes subtext.
It becomes supertext. This necessity created a unique aesthetic that removes the political burden and focuses purely on the emotional bond. The romance becomes elevated to something almost mythological. The West struggles to do this because we have too much freedom. We don't need to code it, so we make it literal. We show the bedroom scene, we show the pride parade, we show the hate crime. And literalism in this specific genre kills the fantasy. You can't replicate The Untamed in Hollywood because Hollywood would feel the need to explain the gayness, whereas Donnie Mae just lets it be, hidden in plain sight.
God is a fascinating paradox, that censorship fuels the creativity. But I don't think the West is incapable of nuance. You are acting like Western writers are incapable of subtlety. Look at The Outliers, Heartstopper, or Young Royals, or even the movie Red, White, and Royal Blue. These are Western productions that adopted BL-like tropes. They prioritized softness, they prioritized the romance over the trauma, and they gave us optimistic endings. And what happened? They were massive global hits.
They are the exceptions that prove the rule. And honestly, even Heartstopper was criticized by a segment of the Western audience for being too sanitized or Disney-fied. There is a cynical reflex in the West that rejects unadulterated joy.
They are trendsetters. They prove that the model isn't locked to Asia. The West is just ideologically hesitant. But the pink economy is converging. We are seeing a shift where Western audiences, especially Gen Z, are realizing they prefer joy-based storytelling. They're tired of the bury your gaze trope where one character always dies in the final act to teach the audience a lesson about tolerance. The censorship in China or the gender roles in Thailand shape the container, yes, I grant you that. But the contents, the joy, the fantasy, the emotional safety are what people want. The West is simply realizing late that they can sell happiness.
But can they sell it authentically without the ecosystem? That is where I remain skeptical. The Thai model works because the actors participate in the illusion. The idol culture in Japan and Korea is a discipline. It is a lifestyle. Western celebrity culture is all about authenticity and being real.
Being real is just a different kind of performance, though.
But it's a performance that is fundamentally incompatible with the BL machine. You cannot have a living, romantic narrative marketing strategy with actors who prize their privacy above the character. In Thailand, the Y couple works because the actors understand that for the next 3 years, they are a unit. They sell the fantasy 24/7. In the West, if you ask 2 co-stars to hold hands at a press conference just to imply they were dating, they would fire their agent. Without that engagement loop, you don't have the BL industry, you just have a standard romance show. And my argument is that the industry, the high-volume, high-engagement machine, is what is locked to Asia. You might get a Heartstopper every 5 years, but you won't get the assembly line of joy that Thailand produces.
I think you are placing too much weight on the idol machine. You don't need the actors to be idols to have the BL revolution. You just need storytelling courage. You need the courage to prioritize fantasy over grit. The success of BL lies in that courage. The West is not incompatible with BL, it just needs to accept that joy is a legitimate form of queer storytelling, not a betrayal of the political struggle.
I see why you emphasize the narrative, and I completely agree that the emotional appeal is universal. But I maintain that the texture of BL is derived from its constraints. The censorship, the gender pressure, the economic necessity. These pressures forged a diamond that the West, with its relative freedom and obsession with realism, cannot artificially recreate. To move BL to the West is to fundamentally alter its DNA. You might make a gay romance, but you won't make BL.
Then perhaps the DNA should evolve. The cultural lock is crumbling because the audience is forcing it to crumble. Streaming has dissolved the borders. When a teenager in Brazil is watching a Thai series and demanding similar content from their local producers, the lock is broken. It is becoming a global conversation. The definitions of gay, queer, and BL are merging.
We are certainly witnessing a convergence, but whether it is a true merger or just the West consuming Asian exports remains to be seen.
I think the future is clear. We are moving toward a world where the pink economy is borderless, projected to reach $1 billion annually by the 2030s. The question isn't, is it Asian? The question is it good? And good increasingly means joyful.
The only question remains, will the West embrace the fantasy or will Asia continue to hold the monopoly on romance?
I'm betting on the fantasy.
And I'm betting the East keeps the keys to the castle. Thank you for listening to the debate.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please consider liking, commenting, and subscribing. It really helps the channel grow. See you in the next one.